Okay, just a quick agenda review here. So we have some things we need to get accomplished tonight. Basically, we've got to finalize our budget that we're gonna present at annual town meeting. And we may have one or two items that are not final, but I don't think we have a choice, and just in terms of the process and the timing, we're just going to have to deal with those things if they do change. Um, and then we're going to look at the draft town warrant and um, discuss any articles that we need to discuss and vote on whether or not the FinCom is going to recommend their approval at town meeting. I think those are kind of two main accomplishments or goals for tonight. And then I think there are a few sort of just budget update kinds of things that we ought to sort of bring people up to speed on. Okay. So I'm not seeing Haley on yet. I think we'll take a look at minutes then, just while we're waiting. So this is minutes from 4/22. All right, and Jim, I see your hand up. Did you have a question or comment about the minutes?
Yeah, they're just two typos. Jim Kelly is back again. This is George.
Oh, I never fixed that on the next because I created them too soon. Look at that. Okay,
Yeah.
I better look at this notes too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah,
Probably because I
well,
copied one from the other and I never.
yeah, copy and paste. We'll do it every time. And 3D, I think it should be Haley is as opposed to
Right.
is
Is
Haley.
Haley
Those are
is
the two
trying.
things. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jim. Bob? Oh, you're muted, Bob.
Sorry, 4B is kind of a awkward formulation, I think. So one, the one, this is needed for legal costs due to ongoing litigation for the solar bylaw litigation. So I think one of those litigations should disappear.
Right. For the solar bylaw. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, and then C, the town clerk has been certified, the town is required. Somebody mentioned at that meeting that we had a bylaw that actually mandated that we had to pay certification bonuses to people. Never heard of that, so I don't know why we're required to do that. So I don't know if that was an accurate.
While we're talking, Bob, I'll dig it up and share it.
Okay, fine.
Grace, in an email to me that Grace sent when she notified me of this development, she included the bylaw, which I was unaware of it. Apparently,
So was I. So I wanted to bring that up, but the other thing I wanted to just point out was it said in the minutes G that the finance committee agreed to use excess levy capacity. I'm not sure we voted on that, but I understand that's where this is headed with all the numbers, but I'm against that. So I just want to make that point. I don't think we had a vote to say that we're going to use it, but because when we vote in the budget, we'll be implicitly, if we do vote to support the budget, we'll be implicitly endorsing that statement. But I had a problem with that statement.
sorry. Okay. What if it said something like, it was, the committee discussed the likely need to use excess levy capacity to balance the budget?
Sounds good. To be fair to myself.
Does that work okay, Bob? Yeah.
It would work, yes, for me.
Okay.
That's it for me.
So the committee discussed
the likely need to use excess levy capacity to balance the budget. All right.
Okay, done.
I'm just gonna show this real quick, Bob, just, okay, I think it's this article. A motion was made and seconded that the town vote to accept the provisions of section to allow additional compensation for certified town clerks beginning FY 2001 at the town set aside $1,000 free cash to fund the first year, partial year that certification is received. So maybe it's not quite.
Yeah, I'm not clear what that means. Are you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, when I first read it, maybe I read it quickly. It seemed like an obligation that we had relative to our bylaws, but maybe that's
You know, one way to read it,
maybe that was just technically a provision, but it says beginning in FY. Yeah, I think I do read that as like we're kind of obligated to do this, but I don't
I
know.
guess one reading of it, for me, it seems like a likely reading is that you're paying a bonus when you get the certification, but it's not an annual stipend. So that's one way to read that paragraph, it seems to me. That's the way I would read it.
Yeah, okay. That's an interesting question. Is it an ongoing annual obligation, or is it just the first time? I'm not sure. Susie,
We
you know
can look at, I'll look up the
Okay.
citation. This is when the town accepts Massachusetts general by law. So I can
Okay.
look that up and it'll state that more
That-
clearly.
that would be great. I think at least for this budget year, what seems unambiguous is that this is her first year getting certified. So I think she's entitled to I think we could probably agree that she's entitled to it, if not on an ongoing basis, at least for this first year. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Makes sense.
Anything else on minutes? All right, I'll
Make a motion to approve as amended.
I'll second.
Overnight aside.
Groves, that.
Hemingway, I.
Cashew, eye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, I.
All right. Okay, so that's minutes. Maybe we can talk about some budget sort of developments. And I think other members might have some bits to share. So I think one is a development on this. Well, let's tackle them in this order. So we have we got an update from Ryan on the library loan expenses. And the update is that there is a delay in the construction that is essentially kicking our interest expense to FY 27, not FY 26. So, so that we had budgeted a certain, I can't recall what it was, maybe George remembers, a certain amount of,
57,000.
Yes.
so that's actually dropping out of our FY 26 budget. And I think you actually made that step, George, before sending the latest version. Is that right?
The last version I sent, I took the
most recent one.
57,000 out in both
Okay.
the revenue side and the debt service side.
Great. Okay.
I left the lines in because we're gonna need them next year anyways, so I just set them to zero.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So that's one development. There's a development on the PFAS Clean Water Trust loan, which didn't sound great. I'm gonna read from Ryan's email. Just pull it up. All right. It says, good morning. I've just had a meeting with DEP and the CWT where they have shared with me that the town of Shutesbury's PFAS project is not, there's a typo here, but no longer eligible for their financing program. The short of it is that previous administration provided approval of this project and new administration at both entities are unable to find how this project meets requirements and are unable to move forward with supporting it. As a result of this, the town is responsible for the cost of this project. The town has already voted at town meeting to approve the borrowing of two separate $150,000 loans for a total of $150,000 to cover this project. I am borrowing the first $150,000 in May for this project. The town must either borrow the second $150K or pay for it out of other funds in the budget. I know the Finance Committee had discussed using stabilization to do so. If this is the case, an article must be on the town meeting warrant. So FinCom needs to make this decision ASAP so that we can prepare to borrow for it if they choose not to, or if it fails. Okay. So, and then in a follow-up email, Haley mentioned that she has communicated with Elena Cohen, who I think is from the Clean Water Trust, if I remember that name.
Yeah.
No?
She's Joe
that-
Comerford's aide.
Oh, so
Yeah.
she's, okay, got it. And Joe Comerford is going to be reaching out to the Clean Water Trust on our behalf. So I don't know what to make of it, but I think we do have to make a decision about what, we, right now, what we have is $150,000 that Ryan is about to borrow. That's been authorized at a previous annual town meeting. We have a warrant article that we're sponsoring to fund $50,000 for PFAS costs. So that's $200,000. We think we've spent somewhere around 181, I think was the number that was discussed at the last meeting so far. So that doesn't leave us much in the way of costs for FY26. So I think we've got a couple of options. One is to decide to propose a transfer from stabilization for some number of dollars for PFAS mitigation. Option two would be to have another warrant article that authorizes Ryan to borrow an additional 150K. Option three, I think, is to not do anything at this point in time, but further explore options, see if anything develops out of Comerford's intervention, and potentially have a special town meeting at a later date. I think Ryan had said that September or August was kind of when he really needed to go out for financing for this. So I think those are the three options we have. I don't know, does that sound right to folks? Bob?
Yeah, I just want to suggest that it seems to me from what I understood from our last conversation with Ryan, that we have paid some invoices, totaling what the number that you just quoted.
Correct.
We anticipate that we're going to have expenses in the coming year, which might reach like $100,000. That's what we were talking about last time. It seems to me that would be wise to have an article at town meeting to provide a transfer from stabilization. Whether or not we use that money would be determined by circumstances as they develop. But borrowing the money and getting town meeting to vote to approve borrowing the money is going to commit us to paying the interest, even if we don't need the money. So it seems to me the best way to go is to get the flexibility in our future to have money available from that source, from the stabilization, and then have it there if we need it, if we don't need it, or if something else comes out of Joe Comerford's efforts, or something else hopefully comes out of the blue sky. We won't have to use the money, but we won't have to borrow and won't be committed to that path. That's my view.
Other thoughts?
I like the idea of waiting till a special town meeting and seeing if we have to, if what happens with Joe. And we have $50,000 that we're transferring already.
Mhm.
So we certainly don't need 150 if we're transferring some from stabilization. Option two is transfer funds from stabilization. Well, right, we've already done a third of what we need.
Mhm.
So to me, I'd like to see, I mean, they had an obligation. They signed a contract with us, did they not? And now
I
there's,
don't understand that, yeah.
Oh.
I thought they did, Bob, for the first portion.
I talked to Brian about this today on the telephone.
Okay, what'd you
Give you a
learn?
little background from him.
Yeah.
Basically, he was on a call with the state, a couple
Mhm.
of people from the state, from that agency, whatever it's called, Clean Water
Trust.
Agency,
Mhm.
and also other people from the state and from the county. So he said, basically, according to the law, we were never eligible for this. The state is basically passing the buck, saying the prior administration of that agency should never have given Becky or anyone else any confidence that we were going to ever receive this money. That we were not eligible. They cannot contribute money to private residences. That's what he said. That's what Ryan told me anyway. So that we're not going to be eligible. We're not going to get this money. It's not going to happen. By law, we're not eligible. So we have to, there might be some other sources of money or support for us, but it's not going to be that particular program. So
So, Bob, the issue is that there's a specific law that prohibits them from awarding these loans to entities for the purpose of mitigating PFAS issues in private homes? Is that was
That's accurate.
unambiguous?
yes. So they made it clear, this crystal clear, that this is not going to happen. And whether or who, depending on who you want to blame, probably good enough blame to spread around. We just found this out this week. So this is the situation we're in. So we have to go forward from this point.
All right, Susie?
It was called the Clean Water Trust Emergency Fund.
Thank you.
And it wasn't listed as just general residents. So I'm not going to argue with them. And this year has been such a struggle. I guess I'm in favor of, there's 312,000 in stabilization. I'm in favor of drawing the 150 from that. And we also don't know how many invoices are still in transit. The process of finding out what invoices need to be paid and getting them copied and sent to the right people. I don't know that that's totally been finished. So Gabe's guess was that we needed $50,000 a year to keep moving the PFAS program forward. That was a guess. So for me, I'll sleep better if we just transfer this out of stabilization and be done with this piece.
And the full amount of 150 instead of to replace our previous plan of transferring $50,000 for yeah.
Yeah, and we don't know what number is the right number. Do we leave the 50 in and do 150, or do we just do 150 and call it this year? I mean, if she's thinking it's 50,000 a year and we've already thought we needed the 136 came out of free cash. That's what that was.
Yeah.
And that was in January of 23. And then, so I don't know if we're spending at the rate of those two borrowings of 150. So we could just do this 150 and call it for FY 26 and the past.
Yeah. Bob?
Yeah, just like the idea of leaving the 50 there and taking 100 out, having a different article for 100 to transfer from the fund, the stabilization money, so that there'd be two different tranches of money, and we wouldn't necessarily have to open the second one until we needed it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it appeals to me just as a concept. I don't know. We don't know what the expense is going to be per annum, so I think that 50 is certainly guaranteed. We're going to spend 50. It seems pretty sure thing. So why not have 50 and 100? I think that we might need more, and if we need more, we can get it when we need it. And until that time, it stays in our reserves. Isn't that true? Or where does it go, George?
I'm
the
not sure. I mean,
passed-
Ryan he confused me last week.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a, it sounds like there's a PFAS uh, mitigation line in our budget, but
Mhm.
what was confusing and unclear to me until last week was that we had been paying for expenses with free cash, but on the assumption that we would eventually be receiving funds from the Clean Water Trust that would then,
No.
but that now that's not happening, so.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, the fund, there's a fund in the books right now that has about $89,000 PFAS mitigation fund. And it sounds like that 136 was one of the things that filled it.
uh-huh.
And we know we have a lot of bills right now because they're out there right now testing. So that is not going to be the balance at the end of the year. But the 50,000 we have gets us through another year. So in my mind, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun, April. I see no problem in waiting for a special town and having a special town meeting if we find out we don't have enough funds to get through the year.
Yeah, but
April.
actually, I'm leaning towards what George has said. You know, and I also don't have an understanding of how much of a chance do we have of being able to move this issue so that we actually are made eligible. I have no idea, but it might make sense just if we waited a few months, it would cost us the same amount of money if we have to, but possibly we won't have to.
Right. Susie,
Does the warrant article, the two of them, obligate us to borrow this money?
Ryan seemed convinced that he has been authorized to borrow this initial $150,000 and that he doesn't have any discretion at this point over that, even if we didn't want him to do
We
that.
passed that at town meeting last year.
Right. So I think that part is a done deal and is authorized.
Well, the motion says, this is from ATM in 24. A
Mhm.
motion was made and seconded that the town of Shutesbury vote to appropriate the sum of money not to exceed $150,000 be, and here is appropriated to pay costs of PFAS mitigation construction activities and the payment of all other costs incidental and related thereto, blah, blah, to meet this appropriation. I'm not trying to find the thing where it says he has to do it. The town treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is hereby authorized to borrow said amount under the blah, 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 or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town, therefore. And then it talks about the Clean Water Trust money. And authorized to execute and deliver any and all agreements and other documents required by the trust, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means you have to borrow it or you're authorized to borrow it, and it's to meet the cost. So he was saying that we could take it out of stabilization and he doesn't have to borrow it.
I
Does
think
that mean?
my
Yeah.
my understanding is that was a reference to the second tranche of the second $150,000 allocation that we thought we were entitled to, and now we're not so sure. But I thought he was pretty unambiguous that in his view, he is actually required to borrow these funds like next month, right? Or whatever the time frame was.
Just to echo that,
Yeah,
I
Bob.
think there's no other source of the appropriation was passed. No source of funding was provided except for the loans or bonds or notes. So that's kind of implies that we agreed to borrow the money. He's saying he's obligated to do it. The appropriation was passed without any other source other than borrowing. So Ryan is very, very keen on that, very, very certain on that point. So I think we have enough, we can't fund that one backwards we didn't pass an appropriation from stabilization to free cash, so we cannot do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So my assumption was that this conversation that we're having now pertains to what whether there's an additional allocation of $150,000 on top of the 150 that he's about to borrow.
I agree.
Jim and then George.
Yeah, just a question. Has anybody heard from any of the other towns about how if they've been afflicted with this Clean Water Trust mix up, that it was, were as misled as we were about how we could use that money? I'm just curious whether we're alone in this or whether we have company locally.
I have no idea. I thought we were one of the first towns to actually have identified this as an issue and
Well, maybe.
I'm not sure. George?
Yeah, I don't know many towns. I know Westfield, but I don't think that's like us. Yeah, one of the things is we all went right along with this loan and we didn't really question it because it was a zero interest loan.
Yeah,
But certainly now that now that we have to pay interest, we should be looking at other options. And I just don't want to make a knee jerk or a quick reaction to this thing, especially because things just seem to be uncertain. And so that's why I still stick with my position of let's keep the 50,000 transfer. We know that'll get us through a good portion of next year.
I agree.
Kathy?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing Jim asked about whether other towns, whether we knew what other towns were doing. But I'm wondering what defines an emergency when it comes to PFAS? I mean, isn't the fact that it's present kind of an emergency in and of itself? I don't know. I'm not what do you have to be, a hydrogeologist or something? I'm not an expert, but isn't just the fact that it's been discovered an emergency? I don't know.
Susie?
I think that was part of the conversation that Aaron Saunders held with Becky. And the sense of the emergency was it was happening, it was detected. Most towns are not doing this kind of checking on it, and it really was the first one. So when they went to Clean Water Trust, they were told, okay, we can work on this. It's called an emergency, and this is what we can offer, a zero interest loan with possibly some of it paid back. And there is a signed document in the town hall from the Clean Water Trust, but tonight we don't need to fight with that. We just need to be clear about meeting the 150,000 from the 24 town meeting and making sure that whatever needs to be done for that one is in place. And I guess I'm getting more and more confused about whether that's in place.
So my understanding from what Ryan spoke about at our last meeting is that is a done deal, that he has an obligation to pursue the financing that he's about to go out for, and that relates to that authorization at the 24 annual town meeting.
Actually, is it 20? So we made the same article in January of 23, in June of 23, and in April of 24. And
you're saying all three meetings had an article that
yeah, well, the one in January of 23 was to use 136,000
That's the
from free
136.
cash. That's the done deal that we
Yes.
know we've taken care of. Whew.
And
Now we're in June of 23 and we have the 150,000
right.
article. And then the next year in April, we had the $150,000 article.
Okay, so I didn't realize there were actually two separate town meeting votes. So I don't know, yeah, now I am more confused, because I thought Ryan was under the impression that the first of those 150K loans had been, the borrowing for that had been authorized, but that we hadn't yet done that for the second. All right,
I did send Ryan
yeah,
a list of
those votes. Mhm.
dates, yeah, dates and votes. And he didn't know anything about the 136, but of course he wouldn't have known because we weren't asking it to be borrowed. And
Right,
so when he was referring last week to they took they took the money out of our free cash, it's like, no, that was our doing.
Yeah,
And we did that. And that was in January of 23. So what's going to happen for June of 23 and April of 24? That's what we need to be clear on. And
okay.
I don't know his schedule that he sent out
Mhm.
lists two separate PFAS borrowing amounts for
Mhm.
150,000. And he has them both dated at 5/29/25, and then they're due a year later. And so I guess he's saying he needs
Yeah.
300,000 to cover those two.
Good. Can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
Bob?
Yeah, Susie, maybe you can help me out. I'm just speculating now that the 24, June 23 was was an article that was uh, saying we should borrow that money from the state, and then the April 24 was the article to permit Ryan to get money to pay that loan back.
No, both of them are from, they're off, neither one can engage the state. So both of them say, and in fact, it's a template warrant article for June of 23 and April of 24. And it says that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer with approval of select board is authorized to borrow. So they're both borrowing
Okay,
articles.
let me just make a speculation here based on just my reading, that both of those were articles that would allow Ryan and actually order him to borrow money to cover the two tranches from the state agency, both 150 each. So each of those articles refers to one of those processes.
Yeah.
One being the 23, the one he's now executing because you borrowed the following year. So
Mhm.
he's executing the first one, the one from 23 town meeting.
Mhm.
And then he was planning on executing the second one, which would be the one voted in 24 in the coming months. So
I think you're
that's
right.
my interpretation. So the total was 300. So that those numbers do add up.
I think you're right, Bob.
Yeah.
So then why did he make a big distinction about him being, having sort of no flexibility on the initial 150K but
Not on the second.
some potential flexibility on the second one?
I think because we can fix the second one at town meeting by appropriating funds to cover the amount.
Got it.
And that's what I
Okay.
think we should do. We should cover the amount. That takes him off the hook. If we don't do it, George, then he's gonna want to borrow the money. We covered from the 50 and the 100, we got 150 covered from our reserves.
Yeah.
So then Ryan is not gonna go around borrowing money for us and inflicting interest payments on us. So I think that supports the notion that we should do something totaling 150 at town meeting.
George?
Yeah, that's a strong argument. We're speculating on a few things here. I guess we think we got it right at this point, but to me, we've never talked to the accountant, and she seems to be the one who can answer some of these questions. And one of the reasons I wanted to delay, and I didn't mention earlier, but AJ and I talked about this today earlier, and that was one of the things I was thinking because Brian didn't have all the answers, and if AJ had been with us. I mean, sorry, if AJ, if the accountant had been with us,
Yeah.
she could have answered a lot of things. So, I'm just afraid that we're making decisions and we don't have all the information. And I am of the position that we approve those loans thinking there wasn't going to be interest on them.
Yeah, but that was an illusion.
Yeah, no, I guess it was. Yeah, we were hypnotized. I hate to take the money out of stabilization. It's going to hurt our ability for future financings, but
You can always put it
makes
back. when you
sense
need
of
it,
what
George,
we
right?
think is true.
So I think we've got a couple options. I think one would be to take to draft a warrant article that transfers $150,000, maybe 100 of it from stabilization, 50 of it from free cash or something like that. It doesn't all have to be from one source. And with an understanding that we can always pull that article at town meeting if in the next month we learn something through Haley's intervention or Joe Comerford's advocacy, and we determine that either we don't need it or that we want some time. And I do think Ryan has some amount of time. I can't remember if he said September or
August,
October.
September.
August now.
August. So I do think there's a little bit of time there. So that might be the safest course of action because, at least will give us a month. But, if we don't do this now, and if we don't draft an article essentially now, and vote on it, we're not going to be able to do anything at town meeting.
I would support that. I'll even make a motion that we take 50,000 from free cash, 100,000 from stabilization in an article or two to support this idea at town meeting. I think having separate articles wouldn't be a bad thing, so you might want to pull one part and leave the other part intact. Who knows? But I think that would give us even more flexibility on that regard.
If we go for stabilization, it's a 2/3, and I don't think we're gonna have a fight on our hands because the town wants us to take care of PFAS.
Yeah.
I think it's actually saner to do it in one article and identify two different sources of
Yeah, I
free
agree with
cash
you.
because the townspeople's heads are gonna be spinning anyway.
Yeah.
So I just think one article, two sources adds up to 150,000, go for 2/3 vote for it.
I would support that motion.
And we could modify that number on town
Yes.
floor if need be.
Right.
We can pull it, we can modify the amounts,
Mhm.
the sources. I mean, we would have some options, yeah.
Second,
Anybody?
I don't think you get a second.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He will in a second. But we're still gonna leave the $50,000 in our budget,
No,
that line item.
So,
It's-
the
It's not in our
50,
budget.
the 50K is not in our budget. It's essentially like a capital item
Right,
where we were just gonna have a separate warrant article transferring funds to.
so this is gonna just combine it all.
Correct. This is gonna replace what we were previously planning to do. Instead of asking for a transfer of 50, it'll be 50 from free, 100 from
Right.
stabilization.
If,
So I'll second it.
so, well,
George?
if a stabilization fund vote requires 2/3, then the warrant article itself would require
Yes.
2/3, even though free cash is in there. Okay.
Yeah, but I think that's a good thing. I think we want I kind of agree with Susie that I don't think this is something that's likely to have a lot of pushback, but it's also like, I think this is the kind of thing we should have sort of overwhelming support from the town. It's an issue that concerns a lot, everybody. So Susie.
So I just want to make sure I understood what April clarified.
Yeah.
We will not have a separate PFAS mitigation 50,000. We're going to do this one article that combines both pieces. And it seems right to me because I don't think we're spending at the rate that the $300,000 was planned for. So I
Right.
think that's okay in terms of that risk.
And in the long run, if things turn around, and we can always transfer those funds back to stabilization out of that fund if we find other sources.
I just want to say, I think it's a good idea to have a 2/3 vote, because I do think this issue really hasn't been fully understood, not only by members of this committee, but by the town at large. And I think that people should be sort of prove of it. And I'm not even clear whether we have to do this or we're doing this because we want to be sure to contain this issue. But I think an airing out of the issue would be a useful thing for our town government. So I think it's good that there's a 2/3 vote. I agree with that.
Jim,
So 150 would be the maximum we would need, because as I recall, we can reduce on town, during the meeting, we can reduce the amount from 150 downwards, so we certainly can't go above it. Is that correct?
yeah, correct. So I think this is what the article could potentially look like if you're looking at, we'll come back to this later in the meeting, but Article 10, to see if the town
Uh-huh.
will to transfer $50,000 from free cash and $100,000 from the capital stabilization fund for the continued payment of ongoing costs of PFAS mitigation, requires a 2/3 majority vote. George?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is it would be great if we could get a meeting with
Yes.
Ryan and the accountant to make sure we fully understand all this. I know it's short notice, but before annual town meeting, so we have information we might need to make a modification to this, or information we need to not touch it.
I agree, yeah.
Hmm.
April?
Yeah, I also wanted to hear from Haley a little bit regarding her sense of the possibility of us being able to get a loan through the Clean Water Act. If you're still there. There you are.
I'm
Yeah.
here.
How did that go?
I haven't heard back, so I don't have a lot of updates. I've reached out to Joe Comerford, like I told you, AJ, and Rep Saunders. So I've asked them to look into it, but I've not heard back from them. Based on what Ryan told me, I'm not optimistic that we would get the loan. There's some concern whether that was a state loan based on federal funds, and if that funding is cut. Yeah, it's very up in the air, which is not an answer that I like to give. But right now it's me waiting to hear back from everyone that I've reached out to.
All right. So it sounds like there might be actually two separate potential issues here. One is that these funds were kind of a pass-through of federal funds that are no longer available under the new administration. That's one potential problem.
It's one potential, because
Yeah.
Ryan's wording was that the past administration had approved the loan, but that it never ought to have been approved in the first place. So I don't know if that means administration of Clean Water Trust. I know
Yeah.
that, and I don't know what happened. There was a 150 authorization, then there was, I think Ryan had been told to not borrow the money. Then we needed to go back out for the second 150. So I still don't really understand what happened in that period between June 2023 and April 2024. I might have to go through some old minutes.
All right.
But
All right. Well, all right. So we have a motion. It's been seconded. I guess we might as well just vote on this proposed article here, right? And save us from having to do it later. Does anybody have any problems with the wording of this? Does this sound, it seems straightforward enough, I guess. All right. So if there's any,
Oh,
yeah.
do we want to say capital stabilization or just stabilization?
Well, I was wondering what the
Question.
balances were like in the
Alright.
two
312
accounts.
312 in stabilization,
I think I meant stabilization. And how much in capital?
and in capital
12,
it's 204.
204. It's not a capital item.
Yeah, so we should just put, yeah. From the town's stabilization fund or the
Yeah.
town stabilization
Yeah.
fund? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for catching that. All right. Any other discussion?
So in this meeting, you're changing the warrant article and we're voting to
Yes,
approve this warrant article.
correct. Right, recommend approval at annual town meeting.
Yep, yep.
I think I'm right to put the select board as the sponsor here, but yeah. Okay, if there's no other discussion, we can vote.
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, I,
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
All right. Well, we will come back to this document, but at least we've got one done. All right, Bob.
I just wanted to share with the committee that I did talk to Dave Grenier finally, and he
Okay.
does want the article for the greater repair back. He said, he did do some maintenance work on the machine, but he would like to do more repairs FY 26, so the money would be useful to him for that machine. So I think it's fair. I would support him. That article being reinserted in the town meeting docket.
Okay, so this is the greater
Repair.
repair. Okay. Okay. You're gonna have to refresh my memory as to the dollar amount of this because
16,600.
16,000.
16,600.
16,600. Okay,
Is that what it
so
said, George? I was missing now.
I'd have to look. I don't know.
Yeah, we could double check that.
I can find it. Yeah, I know where to look. I've got it in my, let me get to the right
so
place.
it's highway department greater repair.
Repair, yeah.
Yes. 16,600.
All right, and I'm assuming will transfer from free cash.
Yeah, just to give it more information to the committee here. He was originally proposing that Amherst Welding would do this work, and they had provided that estimate for that work. He's had some of the work done from his repair and maintenance budget through Cat of Milton, and he's going to do more work through Cat of Milton. So I just think it's fair to that sum of money could be well spent on that machine. So I would support it, but I think that the details are they necessary? They're really not, are they? It's going to be used to repair the machine.
Okay.
That's the restriction, right?
Mhm.
I'm just writing the article now to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash $16,600 for repairs to the highway department's grader,
Road grader, yeah.
road grader. Or take any other action. Okay. All right, Susie.
And I would like to say that if they get farther into this road grader and it's getting more expensive than they anticipate, I would like to go and reconsider the other option, which is to use our Chapter 90 money and finance it through the state. Especially because we're in a time of tariffs and things get more expensive later. They don't get cheaper. So if he's putting some money in now out of FY 25 and he's got 16,600 out of FY 26, I feel like there needs to be an end zone here, in which case we switch the way to approach this. And this road grader is used on half the roads in Shutesbury. And so at some point it needs to be very functioning. So I just want to say that this should be the limit.
Okay. All right. So I think in terms of other sort of miscellaneous kind of budget updates, Haley, you had one since our last meeting relative to this dog officer animal, what was it? Animal inspections. Could
So,
you
yeah,
give us the background on this again? Yeah.
Yeah, so we were able to execute the contract for the dog officer service. I misspoke at the last meeting. I didn't realize that that did not include inspector of animals. But
Okay.
I did some research and there's no set fee or stipend that you have to pay to this person. So we do have some discretion on what you want to set as a parameter, but we will need to find an inspector, and that is a state requirement.
All right, so
Inspector
you're
of
required
animals.
to have an inspector of animals, but there's no set.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no set thing. And this is the person that goes and inspects all the barns and things like that.
So that's the 5,818 that that we budgeted was for that person.
If you're referring to last meeting, that would have just been for the dog officer themselves. And that's the service
$5,800 for the dog officer?
for the year, right?
Yeah,
I don't have the number in front of me,
Yeah, well,
but
the
I
previous year
believe
was
that was the figure.
650.
that's
Well,
what the
that's,
stipend
will
was.
be, yeah, that was the stipend. We've since moved to a contracted service because our dog officer resigned. And that's why we need to, that's why we're thinking about these expenses right now.
So we put 5,818 dollars in the
Mhm.
inspectors of animals line, and we set the dog line to 0.
Yeah,
Now,
you did,
Right, yeah.
but we should have set, okay, so we should set the inspectors to 0. And we should change the dog officer to 5,818.
Unless we think that we need to allocate some funds for an inspector of animals, but we're not, that's what I'm not clear on. Bob?
I just want to ask Haley, I think what you said, if I'm correct, is we are mandated to have an inspector of animals.
Hmm.
So I need to get an
Yes.
inspection sticker for my chicken.
yeah, I think since it's a right to farm community, that it might be a little bit different. I have to admit, I don't know all the ins and outs. But the state does require that every town have the inspector of animals. And I was looking at some of the other communities, and our former person represents like 3 other towns, and I don't think we can win her back. So we would have to try to find a new person.
Do we know, do you know what her compensation was previously?
I could get that to you tomorrow. I don't have my feds printed out, but she
Okay,
just got a stipend. I think it was somewhere in the ballpark. I want to say of like 1,200.
got it.
This is Nancy.
Jim?
It's gonna be on the yellow sheet from last year.
Well, the dog officer line was budgeted at 3,472 last year for fiscal 25.
Right.
And did we have,
But we
Did-
have animal inspector in here somewhere.
yeah,
Animal
Yeah.
inspector,
Line,
So
what?
she was, and she performed both functions, and that's kind of what's also
know.
exacerbating this problem.
But I think that they are entered as 2 separate lines in our budget.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
$566 last year.
Yes.
So maybe we should just do the same thing and move the $5,818 to the
The
dog
dog
officer line?
Right.
yes.
Anybody, Jim?
Does dog licenses that, the local residents are obligated to, purchase every year, doesn't that money go towards cutting into this amount a little bit?
The clerk processes all the dog officer tags, but I don't actually believe that the funds go back to that. I think they support another line item in the budget.
At the library, I believe.
Yeah,
Oh,
that sounds right.
it seems like we ought to, the fees ought to be, the fees that we collect for licensing dogs in Shutesbury ought to go to, at least reducing this amount somewhat. That seemed to be the best thing to do.
Susie?
I'll look it up where it came from, that money goes to the library. I can't remember from my town clerk years whether any of it went off to the dogs, animal inspector or dog officer. I'll look that up. But the other thing is we could We could allocate what's in there, although we know across the board, wages have gone up, and finding somebody for the same amount of the past might not be that doable. In fact, Nancy Long was underpaid for being the dog officer, so I suggest we make it $1,000, and then if that doesn't work, we can take it out of FinCom reserves next year if we find somebody and they're actually more expensive.
All right, so we've got two proposals. One is to fund that inspector of animals line at $1,000. Another option was to just fund it at the same $566 amount, which looks like we had from, it's always been funded from FY 22 to FY 25. It was constant at $566. Bob?
Yeah, I just want to support that number. I don't think we have to preemptively add to our budget here. We already have enough trouble keeping things under control. If this does happen, as Susie described it, we need to spend more. We'll just have to deal with that issue when it comes. But really, I don't see the point of adding another $500 to the pile of problems we have. So yeah, I would support just flat that line.
I'm checking the expense report right now for fiscal 25.
Yeah, that's a good.
And the dog officer line is, so far we've spent 20. I'm sorry, I'm looking at dog officer. I'm sorry. Let me scroll down. Inspector of animals. We've spent $436, 77% of it. And there's 129 left. But that's for the person who left, right? So yeah. So we were spending at the rate of $566 a year.
Susie?
But I'm going to tell you, Nancy Long was underpaid.
Yeah.
Underpaid. And if we went to other towns, we could find out what animal inspectors get paid. But I think part of what happened with her is she was being underpaid as a dog officer and as an inspector of animals. So we can stick with what we have and try to adjust later, or we can try to adjust now. Where is the inspector?
I support the $1,000 because I agree. We're always short. It's only $334. And if we don't, $434, and if we don't spend it, goes in free cash. It has no impact on the tax.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in on this? All right, I'll make a motion to fund this line at $1,000 for FY 26.
I'll second it.
All right, let's vote. George?
Arbornitis, aye.
Groves, I'm going to vote against it for general principles. No.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
Okay. So, George, I'm making changes on my copy, but you'll do the same on yours. and
Yes, I will.
reconcile. So $1,000 is the new budget amount for the inspector of animals, and 5,818, I think is the number.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5818.
Is the new budget amount for a dog officer. Okay, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to say while I'm thinking of it, I did discuss with Steve, not Steve, Grenier, Dave, about the article about the line for the tree warden.
Yeah,
That we were planning on restoring it to its prior level, and he was cool with that because he does recognize that he has money in his budget for some of that work. But he said that would be acceptable to him. We discussed that, and I was asked to run that by him, and I have done so.
great. Okay. Are there any other sort of miscellaneous budget updates? George, can you think of anything sort of a new development from our last meeting that we haven't discussed?
No, I can't. The only thing different that we talked about is I changed the note for the dog officer line to show that we'll have the contracted.
Great.
No, as far as the dollars go, no, I'll have to, I can send this out to everybody tonight because as soon as we're done, I'm going to be able to, do that because I have been updating this. No, I think we need to close the barn door.
Yeah.
Bar
So.
the door.
Yeah.
We need a
So-
new door.
We need a more secure door, right?
We need a garage door opener anyway.
The only thing I wanted to check on was, I'm assuming there's no development on the police chief negotiation. Is that right, Haley?
Correct.
All right. So I think we've got a value that we plugged in. I think it came from Gabe, if I recall correctly. We have no idea if that's gonna actually track with what ends up getting negotiated, but I'm assuming we're gonna just go with that, right? And we can always modify this at town meeting if there's some development between now and then, right?
Right, but it's at 90,000, is that correct?
95 is on the
It's
schedule,
at 95,
and we
okay,
lowered health insurance by 5.
that's right.
Right. Okay, so that was one thing. And then for the administrative assessor, we have reason to believe that like that might not be as sufficient, but we're not going to do anything about it at this point right now, right? Is that?
We'll get another
I just
barn
want,
door.
before we shut
Yeah.
the barn door, I wanted to make sure we were all comfortable with what we're doing there.
Make sure the animal inspector's out.
Alright.
I
God.
did have
Okay,
one other thing about the budget though.
go ahead, George.
So I wanted to ask Haley. Well, I wanted to mention to Haley, I guess, it was the town administrator who always prints the budgets for annual town meeting
Mhm.
and produces the budgets. So I've done pretty much all the formatting I can think to do on this thing. And I set it so that the revenues will print on 2 pages and it will be back to front is typically what we do. And the expenses will print, the sheet called revenue will print on 1 page back to back. So it's 2 pages of data. And then the expenses are on 6 pages of data, 3 pages back to back. It works on my printer, but you definitely need to play with that a little. And if if you're having difficulty with it, we can talk about that and see what solutions we come up with. Because not every printer and apps aren't always consistent across PCs.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to alert you to that. I don't think, and what I'm going to send today may be the final budget.
Yeah.
Mm.
And Haley, one other quick note, we had a little snafu. Was it last annual town meeting where the elementary school has its own budget documents? It's such a complicated organization. And it's only reflected as a single line in our overall town budget. So it's really important for residents to see the details of that budget. So there will need to be printouts of both the town's budget, overall budget, and the elementary school's budget. Susie?
And I talked with the elementary school, they know, and they're gonna provide copies. The
Yeah.
other piece we know by now, we should, is that everything has to go online on the FinCom page where people can look stuff up. And it should include the schools. We should get a PDF of the schools one, and I don't remember what level we do at the region. I don't remember if I don't think it is.
I
So
don't
but
share
their electronic document could be on our electronic page, our town web page, but we don't have to have it printed.
Yeah, I think what we should do, actually, now that you mention it, is that overall kind of budget summary that that has the assessment, for each town, but also has sort of the big, large revenue categories and the overall. I think that document we should make available. So I have the PDF of that. We can post that. By the way, since it just came up, the Leverett Select Board last week, I think, voted 2-1 opposed to support the 14.1% I think it's 14.1, whatever that number was, increase for Leverett's regional school assessment. So that has been endorsed by the select board, which is.
The town meeting this Saturday, I think.
Yeah. Okay, all right, so I think what we need to do now is actually just pull up the budget and have and just have a vote on it. We should kind of make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what we're using, what precise free cash amounts we're using for which items, and then how much we're utilizing of excess levy capacity. I think we should just kind of review those numbers and then have a vote as a committee as to whether we approve the budget. Does that sound right?
Yep.
All right. George, I'm wondering if I should just share mine or should we share yours?
I don't, doesn't matter. I did change the excess levy capacity to balance the budget.
All right, let's share yours.
right.
All right, so do you have sharing privileges or do I need to?
Here, let me check.
Yeah, just check.
I'm in the minutes, so I don't see. I'm gonna hit share and see what happens. Yep.
Okay, great.
So did everybody understand why I sent an alternative format of the budget?
Yeah, you
So-
have less columns.
It was really,
The revenue page, right?
it's the revenue page. I'm going to explain it right now, if I can have 2 minutes.
Yeah, please.
So I'm going to shrink this just a little. In our historically, all right, historically, revenue, we had always shown how the
All is-
levy limit is calculated. Add the 2.5%, add new growth, you get your numbers, and then to that we add the debt exclusion override, and then we get the maximum levy, and
Right.
then we have the excess levy capacity, and then we get what we need to fund the budget, the amount of we need to raise. In the middle of all that is this nonsense, which has nothing to do with any of that.
Right.
And so my proposal is to take this and move it out of there. Oops, I keep going the wrong place. And move it to the top,
Mhm.
and then have our calculations. So when we're explaining this to everybody at town meeting, there's two things. Chapter 2.5 says your tax rate can't be higher than $25. Rows 1, 2, and 3 show you what our levy ceiling would be. It's $25 per thousand of our projected total town assessed value for FY26. That would be 9,127,000. And Commonwealth says you cannot tax above that. Well, the good news is we're coming to town meeting asking for, this number here, something much lower. So the first thing we would say is the levy limit is a percentage. So I don't know what I'll do about that, but this is our ceiling. The state says you can't calculate that. And then the state has another limit, and that's the levy limit.
Right.
And the way the levy limit works is you have a property tax levy limit that is set. We set it, we actually set it 15, 16 years ago when we had a 2.5 override, because what we did was we added to whatever it was at that time, and we reset what our levy limit was for that year. And that number goes up by 2.5 every year.
Right.
New growth.
Mhm.
And then you have a levy limit. To your levy limit, you can add debt excluded override items so that you get your maximum allowable levy. As long as this is below the ceiling, we can approve this budget with a majority vote. So the ceiling it's up here is no longer in the middle of all this, because
Yeah,
these numbers all flow. And so that's why I propose that we switch the way we show this.
yeah. I totally support this. Susie.
I liked it too, but the thing I always wondered about is why in this page it doesn't project the tax rate, because in some ways that's a small enough number for people to wrap. It's on this little table, but I don't have that table on my notes. Did I print it wrong?
No,
Or,
no, it's not supposed to print. It's not something we give to the folks in town. The reason it's there is so that I can, so that I had the numbers for the annual report.
okay,
Right.
and so here I want to say, that's a grabbable, holdable number. I think people can see it and hear it. So maybe that table would be on the last page. The average single family, there's a space on the last, well, I have 3 printed pages for revenue. I don't know if you've changed that,
Well,
but
like I said to Haley, she's got to be careful because that may happen to her too.
Yeah,
can you put that? Oh, well, we should talk about it as a committee. I feel like that's kind of the essence for people.
That could definitely be put in here. Becky and I had debated this in the past, and I forget why we weren't doing it. We both talked about that back when Joe Markarian gave us this new format. Don't know why we didn't do it. Honestly, it's just one line. I
yeah.
mean, really, all I have to do is insert a line here. I'm going to insert 2 lines.
I think
Call it- Well,
I think it's a good idea, but I think the key is that we should make sure when we refer to the tax rate and the average single family tax increase, that it's an estimate and that
Mhm.
yep.
people need to know that this is all based on a set of conservative.
Jello.
Well,
Right,
I think the reason we decided not to put it in here, 2 reasons. One, I don't like talking tax rate because tax rate confuses everybody. Everybody thinks tax rate matters, and it's the formula, but it doesn't tell you how expensive it is to live in one town to the other. Tax rates are not a measure, and everybody looks at the tax rate. And people are going to look at this and they're going to see the tax levies going up in 2024 and 25, but the tax rate kept going down.
Mhm,
And then we have to explain that. And
mhm.
I want to talk in rates. I don't want to tell people that we think that if you look over here on the right, I can't find my mouse. Here it is. If we
Yeah.
look here at the right, I'm calculating what our average single family will be based on the numbers on this schedule. When we put in the means test addition, it's going to be a $330 increase from this year's.
Mhm.
And I don't want to say 330 people. I want to say somewhere between 300 and 350 because it's a range. I might even want to say 280 to 340 because I think we're being conservative here and I think our estimate's on the high side. And
Mhm.
I'd rather talk in terms of ranges and not actual estimates. That's, I think, the reason why we had it in the past.
But what about the whole table, that little table, average single family table on the last page, not to change the flow of the revenue sheet, because it is more iffy. And I mean, actually everything's iffy, but just
Yeah.
put it in the back. And because it has tax rate and average single family cost, that anchors it more, not just rate, but how those 2 things work together.
Well, we don't have to have the budget done tonight in terms of the format and the
Right.
ready to print. We just need the number for the warrant article, right?
Good point.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
So the point being, I'm actually going away again for a few days. When I get back on Monday, I'll make a version of that and distribute it.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll do that.
Could you also include in that what the value of the average house value is? Because I think that would help people.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I think what I'll do is, these are the things I'll put in there. I'll have one, I'll do it like this. I'll do this. I won't include this line. I'll just include this, that, and that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, April, I'll do that. In fact, let me do that now.
And do you want to include it from 2 years, last year and this year?
Well, the thing is, if you're showing all these years, you have to do it for all the years, don't you?
Mhm.
No, because it's
I
a
don't think
little
necessarily.
table.
Yeah,
Well, fine.
I mean, I mean, I can. I just have to go back to the recap sheets from the previous years. I mean, I think I have access to all that, so I think I could do that. But basically,
I think the important thing is the FY 25 and then the proposed FY 26.
Yeah.
People don't need I don't think they need the sort of long historical details on that.
Well, I might put them on and you can, we can make
Okay.
that decision. I don't think it's gonna be that much work for me to do that, so I'm gonna give it a shot. If you
Okay.
don't mind, I mean, if you have a
Oh.
strong objection, I won't.
No, no, not at all.
No, go for it.
All right, so here you go. So it'll be here. It'll be a part of the page that prints. We're gonna have to make the page a little smaller to get it to print on 2 pages. I really don't want it to go to 3, so all right, we'll do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Tax rate and single family taxpayer, and I also got the values on here, April.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
All right. Can you scroll up, George, to the cash reserves used to fund the budget? Yeah, okay. Because I want to make sure that everybody's clear before we vote on what actions we're taking here. So, all right. So some of these, okay, so the first 3 are actions we've already taken at special town meeting, right?
Yep.
So then we have discussed using $34,000 to offset the elementary school, temporary costs. Okay. All right. And then $33,825 to support our transition to utilizing the regional agreement or statutory method for the regional school assessment. $8,250 for veterans benefits. And then $50,000 to fund 50% of the health insurance increase that we're budgeting for in FY 26, right? Those are
yeah, it comes out to 51%.
okay.
Because we lowered it to 99.
Yeah. All right. So those are our 4 line items that are at least either fully or partially funded through cash reserves, and that totals $126,075. Right? So there's nothing else that we've discussed as a committee or that anybody has proposed. Does that sound right to folks? Okay. All right, and then George, can you point us to how much excess levy capacity we're needing to use here to balance the budget?
Yeah, the change in levy capacity goes from 862 to 714. And that means we're using 148,587 of excess levy capacity to balance this budget. Right now, that's what it would take for this budget to be balanced.
Okay, great. All right, and then any questions on any questions or anything need to be clarified on the revenue side before we vote tonight?
The only thing I would point out is we still don't know what the final chapter the final cherry sheet will be.
Yeah.
And the assumption we're making is it'll be a little higher than what we have, but I guess that doesn't really affect anything we're doing here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Hello.
Sorry, Bob, do you have a?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments. One is, yes, the levy capacity and the cash funding of our budget combined equal a total of about 200 and $250,000, right?
Sounds right.
Say that again, Bob?
Total of
48
the
and
excess levy
162.
capacity and the cash and the reserve funding of our budget total, I think about $250,000 of our budget. The
Yeah,
thing
I
that,
think
Rob,
that's a safe bet.
the thing that concerns me is, number one, we are funding some items. Some of the items we're funding, I really fully support because they might be temporary, like part of the school funding. The thing that bothers me is things like the insurance funding part of that with cash. But because I don't see the insurance going down, it's going to continue to go up, maybe just as dramatically next year. Who knows? So I think it's kind of not transparent to fund it with cash and not a good policy to use cash for that. I think that that's related to the issue which I raised in our last meeting, which is that, we talk about compensation for different jobs in town, but we never actually include healthcare as part of the compensation we provide to our employees. And when you have dramatic increases like this, 20% increase in healthcare costs, that's a dramatic increase in compensation, which should be calculated in the general compensation package, so that it's not just there and not counted. I mean, I think that's not really fair to the taxpayer. I have Social Security and Medicare. My increase in Social Security was eaten up by my Medicare tax. So that's because they count it as part of my compensation. So we don't, and that concerns me. That doesn't seem equitable to me. The other thing is, if we're putting these raises that we're providing, that we've actually supported in phases, we already agreed to significant increases in the tax load that's going to come land next year, and that's going to just be deferred for 1 year. Supposedly, I think, and George used the word, to soften the transition. Well, I don't see it just softening the transition as much as it's just delaying the impact of something that's already been agreed to, so that it's more acceptable at town meeting. We should be more transparent about these things. We should debate them openly. We're going to provide them. We should fund them. And I think that this is a very significant increase in our budget. It's been somewhat occluded by the calculations that we have here in front of us. But I really don't think that I don't think we really did our job here. That is to balance the needs of the taxpayer with the needs of the town government and its related expenses. The only person that we pushed back a little bit on was Kristen. Everybody else got exactly what they asked for. That, to me, is not, it's not really us doing a good job. This is a too much increase in spending for people, many of whom who do not have concomitant increases in their income. So, and those are the people that we need to be most concerned about, since we have a regressive tax system here. That's what my concern is. That's why I have a hard time supporting this budget.
Well, I see Susie and George's hands up, but I guess maybe I can just respond to a couple things. I think, I mean, let's be frank about this, right? Like the highway department, for example, has a 3.87% increase in its overall budget this year. Fire is,
It's over 5, I believe.
Well, here, let me take you to it.
5.2%.
5.2%.
I think, I mean, my feeling is, and I thought a lot about this, like,
Most of that's their maintenance.
yeah, I think the only department that had proposed a significant increase that really represented potentially, there was a question about whether it reflected a level services budget or not, may have, but to this day, it's possible that it did. I think there's still some confusion about it, was the police department. And that department, the chief had volunteered to delay some of the department changes that she wanted to make. I just don't think there's a lot of areas to trim this budget, Bob. And I don't think we had, feel very comfortable that there was not an opportunity to push back or reduce a departmental budget that I just didn't see a lot of opportunities here that we haven't taken advantage of. So that's my sense of it. And then I think on your first point, I do think that there's precedent for us using cash reserves to fund operating budget items. I think we've had two rationales and two justifications in the past. One is about a truly sort of temporary, unusual cost that represents a kind of unique cost in a single fiscal year, where we don't expect that to be a recurring issue. That's one. But there is a precedent for us using free cash to essentially cushion the impact of a significant large increase in a budget line. And, we've got two choices. We could say, we're gonna make taxpayers deal with the increase to the regional school budget in total this year without any utilization of cash reserves. We could put the burden of our increased health insurance completely on taxpayers this year and not use any cash reserve. That's an option we have. I think we're doing precisely what I think you've advocated for, which is to sort of look out for the taxpayer and do what we can to provide them some cushion, some relief in this year. And so I think there is precedent for us using cash reserves to do that, to kind of transition what is a large, significant change in an operating line, but budget line. So that I'm comfortable with us using it for that purpose for the regional school and for the health insurance. Susie?
I hate to take it off of this part of the discussion, but I need some clarification. We lowered the cost for the debt service. And yet our use of excess levy capacity went from 117 up to 148. So I am confused why that happened.
Two things happened. We dropped the 57, but we added, we also dropped the 30,000 in revenue for the legal.
So you remember, Susie, at one point, we said we had the legal line at $40,000 instead of 20.
Right?
And we had thought about using $20,000 of free cash to partially
30.
fund that. 30, that's right, 30. So when we made the decision at the last meeting to essentially pull that out and almost treat it at the same way we treat capital items, where we're having a separate warrant article, we want to promote a debate at town meeting about whether the town should support. So that meant it got pulled out of our operating budget and on both the expense and the revenue side. Right? So.
But why wouldn't simply, because I need simple tonight, why wouldn't simply moving the debt service of 57,000 out of the operating, why wouldn't that lower what we?
Because we also had revenue on the revenue side because it was a debt exclusion override.
Oh, okay.
We had to take that revenue out of the revenue side.
All right, right. Okay.
All right. Any other, so George, sorry.
Yeah, so a couple things. AJ, I thought you covered some of what I was going to say. So I think I think this budget does a very good job of balancing the needs of the town with the needs of the taxpayer. And I think part of the reason that is because we're using cash reserves. Every year we go to town meeting, we bring a level service budget, and we're doing the same thing this year. And the region is the only exception, and we have little control in the region. Our say in that matter is pretty small. So we're bringing the budget we always bring, and which traditionally has passed. So I think it's what the voters would want to see us bring to them. So how are we going to fund that? I think this balances the need of the town and the taxpayer because the big increase in a few of the items are smoothed in. And I think one of the benefits of that is, yeah, it keeps the tax rate from spiking, which is something nobody wants to have happen. Yeah, I'd rather have a bigger increase than I'd rather have an increase each year than wild fluctuations from year to year. I got a budget that I have to manage for my home. And I also think we're being transparent, Bob, because we're showing these numbers, and this is going to be discussed. We're going to present it in an annual report, and when we discuss our budget and the concept of how we're balancing our budget, we're going to mention that. And additionally, using the cash, there is one other thing which I'm going to sound like childish right now, and that is there may be new revenue in the future. And if the state, if the Senate does increase Chapter 7 funding, if the Quabbin bill passes, if they ever address pilot, some of this cash we may have new revenue replace this cash instead of having to increase our levy. So buying a little time from that perspective, but from that perspective, I I think it's another reason why I'm not shy in using the cash. And then finally, um, the personnel board and the salary issue. Yeah, we know that when you hire an employee, every employee has benefits. And when we hire an employee, those benefits are going to impact our budget. When the personnel board does the analysis of the salaries and compares our salaries to every other town also has that. We can't say we're going to pay our people 20% less than the other towns because we pay health insurance, because people are going to go to that other town where they do give health insurance as well as 20% more. So the personnel board is aware of that, and that is figured in these negotiations.
Bob,
Yeah, I'll be brief. Just want to say in response to my colleagues here, I think that I do pride myself in that I try to be fair-minded. I have a lot of sympathy and respect for the town employees, but I do care for principally my obligations to the taxpayer. So I could say that I have had good relations with Dave Grenier, and I think I have good relations with Kristen and Lenny. But doesn't mean that I don't look at their budget and look with a critical eye at what they are asking for, whether they need it or whether they just want it. And as far as just the comment that George made about Lenny, I like Lenny and I like the way he runs his department. But when he put that request in, he said that the maintenance line was underfunded and he wanted an increase, a substantial increase, because that was just funding routine maintenance, not repairs. Well, that's just not a true statement. It's not true. I've been on this committee for 9 years. There were repairs were done out of that line. And there were repairs that were shown when he gave us the document. There were repairs shown in the document from that line last year in the expense report. So that's something we could talk about. We don't have to just rubber stamp every request. We can talk to the persons about it, and we can try to control the growth in our budget. I think that's an important aspect of our job. It's not disrespectful to any department to do that. I think it's essential to the conduct of our obligations. So I don't make any apologies for it. I think it can be done respectfully, but it can be done with a sharp pencil. So I don't see that we do that. That's my own take. Okay, I've said that all along. You won't have to hear it much longer, but that's my take. I think we could do a better job in that regard.
Susie.
I'm sorry that you misheard the fire department's request, because misunderstandings are really not helpful. The former fire chief had not done all the inspections that are required as a way of saving some of that money for maintenance and repairs. When Lenny took over, the other chiefs told him, do not skip over those inspections. So he showed me the list of money that had been spent for, they called it maintenance and repairs, and I thought I shared it with you. Those were inspection costs, and he could not do repairs. So changing the title from simply whatever it used to be to being able to say they needed repair money. And I know that they've used repair money to help prolong the life of some of the equipment. So that was the difference of what was happening from the past to the current. And then year after year, the finance committee worked with the departments to come in with budgets that were actually below 2.5% increases. That meant people were very cautious and very conservative about how they spent. That's where the excess levy capacity came from. We did not try to engage the full 2.5% just because we had it. We spent what we needed to do for level services. Now it is in the year that we're facing, we do need to use some of that excess levy capacity. And people aren't always good at remembering what they didn't have to spend over the last many years of the 2.5. And now we need to engage some of it to make sure that we can get through FY 26.
George,
I'll just point out that we had to make I think it was $9,000 FinCom transfer to the fire maintenance this fiscal year. So we can say this is an increase from year to year, but the reality is, he did run out of money. I guess for the reasons that it sounds like for the reasons that Susie said. I would point out that by not charging to the full extent that we could have taxes in the past, we hope that we'd never be in this position. But we are, and we're not alone. There's many towns in our valley that are having to vote 2.5 overrides, and we're lucky that we have the ability. We haven't been taxing people the way we have, and I do want to try and keep the tax impact as low as I can for the people in our town. But our town historically supports level funded budgets, so I think the level funded budget is what I'm comfortable bringing.
all right. So I think I'm gonna, if there's no other sort of commentary or kind of clarification questions, I think I will make a motion to approve our currently drafted budget.
Should you include the total amount in it?
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm making a motion for the FinCom to approve our proposed FY 26 budget, which includes total revenues of 7 million. Wait, let me get the right number. George, I have $7,677,806. Is that what you have?
I clicked the wrong thing. 6,678,806.
All right, total revenues?
Yeah, did you change the excess levy capacity?
But you know what? Why don't we have you plug in?
Well, here, I'll show you my screen and then you
Okay.
tell me,
Okay,
we'll try and reconcile what you have to what I have. So on the total budget is 7 million. Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
The total budget is 7,678,807. 806.
yep, that's what I have. Yep.
Okay, and then on the revenue side, you should have the same thing. And if you're out
Yep.
by $1,000, it's because your excess levy capacity should be changed to.
No, I think I have the right, I have 7,677,806. Is that what you're showing? Sorry, I'm like,
Yep.
That right there. Yep.
yeah, so no, we're matched up. All
Okay,
right,
yeah.
so just to restate it, I'm making a motion to approve our current proposed FY 26 budget, which includes total revenues and expenses of $7,677,806.
Second.
And do you need, okay, the regular article for the budget includes the sources of it. Are we just, you're just going for the budget?
I
I think-
actually have that here. So what I
Yeah.
did was on the bottom of the sheet is here's the warrant article
Okay,
and
great.
it breaks out.
Okay.
So the total budget is the first yellow one.
Mhm.
And then the second yellow one, by raising the sum of 7,542,71. That is this number here, which is tax levy, cherry sheet, local aid.
Okay.
And then the next line is transferring from free cash, which is our 126,705, and then the septic betterment, which is 10,000. So these three items are these three items here, and then the first item is this, and they add up to that as they should. So
Right.
this is something Haley, you might want to take a screenshot of, or whoever's doing the warrant article can fill the numbers out based
Well,
on
we're gonna-
someone's schedule.
We're gonna do that during this meeting.
Okay, okay.
I'll plug those in right now. actually.
So, yeah, so the revenue piece is broken out this way.
So I think there was a second. Any other discussion? Okay, George?
Arvanitis, aye.
I'm gonna vote aye reluctantly with the kind of misgivings that I tried to express, so aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
All right. So that motion approved 7-0. Okay, so I think what we need to do now is go through our warrants, but before we do that, Haley, I think you might have had an item for tonight. Did you need to talk about the FY25 legal expenses tonight or?
No, there
No.
will be a separate meeting for that.
Okay, got it. All right. So, I'm gonna share, actually, George, would you mind, just as I'm gonna fill in those four numbers, that we need for the warrant article, so,
Want me to share the screen again?
actually, if you don't mind just reading them to me, just because I'm
That's
on my
fine.
laptop, so I can't actually.
Sure. So, okay, so the first one, so let's just read. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate transfer from available funds, borrow, or otherwise provide sum of money to meet town expenses, including operations, capital, salaries, school expenses of 7,678,806
Okay, great.
by
By
raising a sum of 7,542,731.
Okay,
And transferring $126.75 from free cash and 10,000 from septic betterment fund.
okay, perfect.
If there's
Okay.
somebody out there with a calculator, add up those last three and see if they equal the total.
Bingo.
Nice, thank you.
All right, so I am gonna go ahead and share the town warrant. Okay. So I have just, can everybody read this okay? So I think what we need to do is just, discuss, vote on the articles highlighted in blue here. So the Article 2 is our regional school budget item, which is much simpler this year because not using an alternative assessment method this first year and who knows how long. So the article reads, to see if the town will vote to adopt a budget of $37,077,171 for fiscal year 2026 for the Amherst Pelham Regional School District using the statutory method as outlined in Section 6 and Section 7 of regional agreement, and assess member towns as follows. And then it spells out the amounts. I pulled this language directly from what the regional school committee voted in their budget, their sort of final budget meeting. So I think we're good on this. Susie?
So the fact that it's a rolling 5-year average doesn't use any word modified in there?
Nope, this is because I think we can just, can be described as the regional agreement method because that's written into our
Okay.
regional agreement. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion for the FinCom to recommend approval of Article 2 as
I'll
written.
second that.
Okay, any other discussion?
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
So 7-0. All right, budget, sorry, Article 3 is the budget. We've already done that. Article 4. So this is kind of I think there are a few sort of pro forma ones here to see if the town will vote to set the salary compensation for all elected officials of the town as provided by MGL Chapter 41, Section 108, as contained in the budget or take any other action. So, Susie,
Can't we just do this like the housekeeping or what did he call them?
Yeah.
What does the moderator call them? He
I think it
groups
is housekeeping when you do multiple in a row.
He groups them. There's a word for grouping them and just saying, yep, yep, yep.
Consolidation.
Or
Yes.
consent.
Sure.
Anyway. So what, let's see, Articles 4,
5,
5,
6,
6,
7,
7,
8.
8, 9.
Now, you guys are really challenging me now because this is not how I was set up to do business. Okay, hold
Just
on.
call it 4 through 8.
Yeah.
I
So,
guess-
Well, I got the descriptions of them, but okay, I just
Okay.
want to consolidate,
yeah.
approve the following.
So we're gonna make,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a motion to recommend approval of Articles 4 through
Maybe 9. 9
As-
includes a revolving fund. We never
Yeah.
mess with that.
So, all right, so Article 4, the salary, Article 5 is compensating balances. They changed since the last one I had. Article 6 is what?
is to allow the town to apply for and accept.
Accept grants,
Grants,
okay,
right.
and then 8,
7 is
Catherine
to
Hilton.
appoint.
oh,
Karen.
yeah, okay, that changed.
9,
Article
8 is
8 to
Walter.
appoint Walter Tibbetts.
Got it, and 9 is the revolving funds, got it. Okay, I got it, I'm good, I'm with you.
All right. So is there a second? We're
Second.
voting. Yeah, great.
Got it.
Any discussion? No.
Arbor Night aside.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Closure, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
Can you scroll down there for a second, AJ, please?
Yeah.
What's the dog officers getting there? I mean, the
Uh,
dog tags.
Let's see. Okay, I'll get there in 1 second. I just want to fill in these real quick.
Ooh.
All right. Sorry, is this what you were
I just
asking?
was curious what was put in the budget for dog license and control, $1,000.
Mhm.
And I don't see the animal inspector there.
No, I believe that is a revolving fund to help pay for the dog tags.
Yeah.
And so there's cost out and money in. But I don't remember for sure, but we've never messed with it.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So, I think we already voted, right, on our
Article
PFAS.
11, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So I've got that, if I got my numbering right, that's Article 10, actually, George.
Yes,
Yep.
right. My computer's, there we go,
Right.
okay.
So now we have a set of capital articles. So Article 11, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash $11,400 for a new mower for the highway department.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
Arbor Night aside.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Closure, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
Passes 7-0. Okay, just for a number, I didn't want to screw up the numbering even more here. We added 11, what I'm calling 11B, but if that's okay, George, we can just call it that for now, so it doesn't screw up the numbering of everything else.
No,
'cause-
so which one?
This is the one which is
Grader.
where we put back in an
Oh,
item
that's
for the
gonna,
highway department's road grader.
okay,
So the article reads, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash $16,600 for repairs to the highway department's road grader.
and we already proved that, right?
No, I don't think we voted on this yet.
Yeah, we did.
We did?
AJ,
Okay.
We did, yeah, according to the minutes, we did. I wrote down that we did.
I
That's
suggest
7-0?
something, AJ?
Yeah, go ahead.
Capitalize the B, otherwise it's like £1.
Sorry, capitalize what?
A B,
Oh, it does.
it looks like £1 to me, so you know.
Okay,
So, all right, so this
I'm
is
gonna-
11, capital item 11B is the grader.
Yeah.
All right, well,
I
again,
don't-
I think my notes, I wrote up top that we approved it.
I
Yeah,
don't
okay.
see it as a vote. I don't have it as a vote.
Let's vote it again.
all right, let's
Sure.
just to be
We'll
safe,
vote.
let's vote. I'm gonna make a motion to recommend approval of Article 11B as written.
Second,
All right, George,
Overnight, aye.
Groves, aye.
Emery, I.
Cashew, aye.
Mosher, aye.
Salvador, I.
Einstein, I.
Article 12, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash $8,648 to replace the fire alarm system at Town Hall or take any other action. Did I describe this right? It's the fire alarm at Town Hall, right?
Yes,
Yes.
that is right.
Upgrade, I would say, rather than replace.
Oh,
Uh,
they were gonna replace a panel.
Yeah, so it's an upgrade on the system.
All right, let's call it upgrade the fire alarm system at Town Hall. And I didn't know, should I put the building committee as the sponsor for this?
Why
That's-
not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we
Um,
gotta tell them.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna make a motion to recommend approval of Article 12 as written.
Second,
All right, any discussion?
Overnight, aye.
George,
Groves, aye.
Emery, I.
Cashew, aye.
Mosher, aye.
Salvador, I.
Einstein, I.
Okay. All right, Article 13, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash $10,000 for needed town hall meeting room repairs.
Yep. Good.
Again, I put the building committee as the sponsor for this.
Second,
All right. All right, so any discussion? All right, George,
Overnight, aye.
Groves, aye.
Emery, I.
Cashew, aye.
Mosher, aye.
Salvador, I.
Einstein, I.
Okay. All right, Article 14, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash $8,000. So you guys gotta tell me if I got this right, to allow the select board to apply for grants that require matching funds for funding improvements to the Lake Wyola recreation area. I
Was it
wasn't,
apply or? I, s- I
I
thought
th-
maybe they already applied.
I
It's
thought,
matching.
yeah, I thought these were matching funds, right, for proposals that the town was be submitting for funding.
But I don't think the select board, is select board the one who's actually applying for the grant?
Well,
Haley, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so we are applying for a grant with help from GZA, and the grant will be stronger with a match. So we're asking for the 8,000, but we've spoken to some Lake Wyola Association. I don't have all the names memorized yet, but they've contributed 4,000. So in essence, we will pay 4,000. So they've matched our match.
Oh, and they approved
so
that.
I believe so.
Yeah,
I'll
because
double check.
we said 8,000 based on the possibility that they might not. So if we know they did,
Yeah.
we could lower this, right?
right.
Let me get back to you on that. I just don't want to say the wrong thing, but they seemed very amicable, because it would be an important project for the dam.
Yeah.
So
I'll make a
let's,
note to follow up with you.
let's do this. Let's keep it at 8,000 now, but we can even potentially before the select board meets next week, we can revise this down if we get information from Haley in the next week. Does that sound
Mhm.
Yes.
appropriate? Okay.
Good night.
Suzie?
I did talk to Jen Wallace. She said Lake Wyola was gonna make their approval. They were gonna make their approval and they were hoping that we would approve ours too. So they didn't know if they were gonna need to be contingent or we were gonna need, so
Or we're-
anyways,
Like everybody's contingent on everybody
Yeah.
else.
yeah, right.
Yeah, where does egg or what came first, egg or the chicken?
So leave it
Bob?
at 8.
Yeah, I just wonder if it might be better to say, to allow the select board to provide matching funds for a grant instead of that formulation,
Yeah.
to allow the select board to apply for grants that, no, they already applied, so they're providing matching funds for grants.
All right. To allow select board to provide matching funds.
But we need the number because it's money.
Yeah,
Well,
the number's there.
so we will vote to transfer from
For
free
grants,
cash,
funding
$8,000 to allow the select board to provide matching funds
for grants,
or grants
fund for
for improvements to the Lake Wyola recreation area?
yeah.
Or
For
is it,
grants,
is it a grant
fund.
or how many grants?
I don't
It's
know.
one grant.
It's
oh yeah, for a
Okay,
grant
for a grant.
to
for-
fund improvements to the lake,
grant to fund improvements.
to the lake.
Lake Wyola
Area.
Recreation Area.
Really not.
Yep.
So to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash $8,000 to allow the select board to provide matching funds for a grant to fund improvements to the Lake Wyola
I
recreation
would just
area.
say for a grant for improvements. I think it's a little better. A grant for improvements.
Well, it's I wrote down provide matching funds for a grant to fund improvements.
Whatever.
This is just wordsmithing, right? Does
Yeah.
anybody have a
Yeah.
preference?
This is good. We got one.
Okay, all right, we got it. All right,
Good. So I'll make a motion. We pass this. We recommend this.
I'll second it.
all right, any further discussion?
Nope.
All right, George,
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
Okay. So Article 15, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash $30,000 for legal expenses to support the town of Shutesbury in its solar bylaw litigation or take any other action. So I don't know. I put the sponsor as the planning board. Does that seem appropriate?
It's their law, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's their bylaw.
All right. And again, this is just to remind everybody, we've taken this out of the operating budget because we want to promote or a discussion at town meeting about whether we want to kind of commit to funding
Yeah.
this, or if we want, by not funding it, basically communicate that we want to
We're
change
done.
strategies. Yeah. So does that wording sound right to everybody?
Mhm.
Does to me.
All right, so I'll make a motion to recommend approval of Article 15 as written.
Second.
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
All right, so I'm gonna suggest I'll make a motion to approve Articles 16 and 17 as a block here. These are the
Yeah.
MLP's items.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. And Jim, I think these numbers came to me from Haley, so I think they've plugged in the.
Yeah, I'm gonna reconfirm them with Steve and Gail, just to be sure that we're all
yeah.
on the same page. I'm gonna copy
Yeah.
and paste them.
Okay, great.
But
'Cause
I
if
think
there's a
everything looks
mistake-
fine.
yeah, if there's an update, we can always do that next week at with the select board.
Sure, okay.
All right, so yeah, I'm making a motion to recommend approval of Articles 16 and 17.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
Okay. All right, let's see what else we have. So, is Haley still on?
Yeah, I'm
Haley,
here.
do we know, do we have any bills from prior years that something?
Not,
Yeah, go ahead.
not that I'm aware of.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna just leave this in for now in case anything
Mhm.
emerges in the next week, but I don't think there's nothing we need to.
Probably we won't because we passed them at the special town meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's right. All right, so All right, so now there are a couple of planning board. I was assuming we do not need to,
No,
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 We do
no,
not
no.
not need to
Hopefully.
deliberate. Yeah,
No, it's,
and that includes Article
Yes.
20 as well. Okay, then there's a series of articles. Now, I'm not sure how we want to deal with this from the CPC. I assume, is Rita still a member of the CPC? Do folks know or?
I think she is.
Okay, so I'm assuming at the select board meeting next week, she or somebody will kind of just review these, but we have not actually talked about these. Now, these are not like, this is not our money. This is not anything where.
Sure
so
is
I'm-
our money.
I mean, it's not coming
Indirect.
from it's not operating budget and it's not coming from any of the funds that we take actions on. So we could vote tonight just as a block. And I'll just tell you, my instinct is to say the CPC exists to vet, to like accept proposals for projects and to vet those projects. And if they're recommending and putting forth these projects, I think I don't think it's appropriate for the FinCom to sort of override any recommendations that they're making. But that's my approach to this. So I would be inclined to just as a block, support or recommend approval of these items, but I'm not sure. We haven't really discussed that. Any thoughts about this?
That makes sense to me.
that makes sense to me too.
Okay. All right, so in that case, then I'm gonna make a motion to to recommend approval of Articles 22 through 31. No, sorry, 32.
32, wow.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. As written.
Okay, I'll second.
All right, any further discussion?
I just want to mention that in the past, the FinCom does make a recommendation and you're saying, let's make it as a block.
Yeah.
Well, with the caveat that if Rita's still a member of the CPA,
Yeah, we might get some additional explanation at
Exactly.
the next meeting,
Yeah.
yeah.
With the
Bob,
caveat of what? Should I put this in the minutes?
that we may get further explanation of these items at our next meeting,
with the select board.
the select board.
I wonder whether we should wait to vote on them till we get that explanation.
What explanation are we looking for?
Well, just.
A
what the
narrative.
budget
If we're gonna
represents.
approve something, shouldn't we have some knowledge?
Yeah, I
I would
agree.
like
Yeah.
a
I like
narrative
the budget
about it.
approval.
But what we know is that the CPC is a committee that put this in front of the town.
So then why are we voting on it?
In the past, it says FinCom recommends.
Well, George, because we advise the taxpayer who has to approve every one of these single articles, has to be approved by the taxpayer. And then they're sure they're going to be voted on separately at town meeting. So we
Yeah.
advise the taxpayer. So I think we have an obligation to review them and to recommend or up or down,
All right, so why don't I do this? Why don't we hold off on voting on these tonight? I'm gonna follow up with Rita and ask and confirm that at the next select board meeting, there'll be at least some review or discussion of these items. And whether that comes from her or somebody else from the CPC, it would be, we felt that was important for us to have that that context before we made a recommendation.
Yeah.
Does that seem
I
reasonable?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very reasonable.
Okay, all right. Then, I don't think, Article 33 is relevant to us. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. Let's see. Energy Code, Article 34. I don't think we need to weigh in on that.
No.
It's gonna be a long meeting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, we can leave.
Decarbonization.
break all records.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my
Yeah.
God.
Not sure how that would look if the entire FinCom just like got up from the table and left.
Yeah. We can
All
tag
right.
team, like everybody gets an hour off.
Yeah, put our heads down and sleep, nap.
All right. Article 36 is proposed amendment to the FERCog charter. I don't think we need to
Oh, good
weigh in
grief.
on that. 37, what is this? See the town will accept, I don't know what these, to me, that doesn't seem.
No
we need to weigh
financial
in.
impact.
Yeah, 38, same with 38. Same with 39. I think we might be done, guys. Let's see.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Citizens petition, I don't think we need to weigh in on that.
Oh my God.
Oh,
41,
yeah.
42.
Oh, my
42.
Hunting
God.
on private
Oh, my
property.
God.
These aren't small bylaws, by the way.
Yeah,
No, they're
Yeah.
not.
Hunting
right.
on land is going to be a big debate.
Yep.
yeah.
The
All
living
right.
home bylaw, but is it to ban hunting on private property?
Oh, I don't know what it does. I
I
just see what it
Anything
puts
to
out, and that's enough for me.
To be
Hunting on
honest with you, I
private
didn't
property
read this.
bylaw.
Yeah.
I didn't read that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, we're not going to do this right now.
No.
All right, so guys, I think we've deliberated on everything we need to for this meeting, except for the CPC ones, and we'll get to that next week. So just review, we are meeting jointly with the select board. Actually, now that I think about it, I've got to verify what time that is. I will share with with everybody, Haley and the select board, our draft of the articles that now have our votes included. And I will follow up with Rita about wanting a little bit more information about the CPA items. And I think we should just, we should be there to answer questions, to do a little very brief overview of the budget. And yeah.
Yeah, we should be there in person.
Yeah.
For our section, yeah.
person, good.
Yeah.
Whoever
can.
can, yeah.
So you'll give us a time, AJ? When we're
I
supposed to
will,
start?
yes. Because I don't know. I know they usually meet earlier than we do, so I've got to just verify when that's going to be, where we're going to be in their agenda. So I will let you all know. Susie?
So you said that we're meeting with them, other than the CPC, we're just clarifying questions they might have. And we're gonna send them the documents, the budget and our votes on the warrant articles ahead of time. But I think I just want to go in it knowing that we're not there for the whole evening to listen to a lot of rehashing on their part. That's their decision.
Yeah, I think our obligation is that when it comes to Article 3, the budget article, that we're there to, I think, do a brief overview. I know that Rita has spent a decent chunk of time in the last couple of weeks on at least the last version of the budget. So I think she's really informed. I see Melissa's been listening to tonight. So I think our duty is to be there to answer questions. But they will know what our recommendations are, because I'm going to send them the document that we've just been looking at.
Sounds
Can,
good.
AJ,
can we
before we
adjourn
leave.
the meeting now?
Well, let's hear George. He's got something.
No,
Sorry,
George.
guys. Sorry, everyone. So, I'll send out the budget tonight.
Okay.
It'll have every change we made, except it won't have the tax rate and the single taxpayer bill in it. The annual report is going to take a little extra work. First thing I'll ask you, AJ, is if you could go into the document and add
Yep.
the 16.6 to the capital expenditure, because I got to update the expected. I'll put that in the annual report, and I'll change the expected cash reserves after town meeting. I'll also obviously change the revenue and the expense sections, and that includes the graphs. So
Yeah.
I'll send that out to everybody, but probably not till next week. When do we plan on actually reviewing that and having that on our agenda?
Oh, let me just quickly pull up the schedule.
And you said the select board meeting, that's May 6th. It's next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, yep. All right, so. All right, I think what we should do is we're gonna meet with the select board May 6th. I think May 13th. We should meet and do two things. One is review and finalize the annual report. And I think we should discuss and have a plan for our public information session and how we want to present at annual town meeting, which I think is going to look a little different this year. I think we should have a discussion about those things and the sort of logistics of how we're going to deal with both the public information session and the annual town meeting.
Well, every week for 2 months.
I know.
We'll get extra pay.
I think,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Double.
I mean, if we don't do it the 13th, I guess in theory we could do it on the 20th, but
Better
I
to
don't
get it
know.
over with, though, right?
No, we need to.
Yeah, let's get.
I'm not saying, I'm not
no, I know,
suggesting.
it has been a lot. I agree, yeah. Susie,
And it sounds like in your plan, it doesn't include a meeting with departments. And if we get the report out shortly after the 13th, when we meet about it, then that's part of the getting everybody to know where we are.
Mhm.
I guess because I don't think any one budget is sticking out in a way that people from inside or outside will particularly target. That was
Mhm.
part of my idea.
Yeah,
And no town department is gonna say, well, you didn't tell me this when I came in. I don't think that's gonna happen. So I guess I can see letting go of the meeting with the departments as long as the information gets out to them. And we do our liaison part and say, did you see it? How's it look?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions or concerns that we can address?
yeah. I think what we should do after, like, right after the May 13th meeting is we should email a copy of our annual report that we'll have just finalized and the budget. And I can send that to each department head, say, this is what we're planning on bringing to annual town meeting. Your liaisons will be reaching out to you to see if you have questions or concerns, something like that. And then I think each of us can reach out to our respective departments and make sure they've had a chance to look at it and see what questions they have.
Sounds good.
So,
And yeah, go ahead, George.
did we ever, I was wondering the other day, did we ever tell Gail that we would like her to produce the report to replace open checkbook?
I didn't, so I think I should, and I don't know that I've got to check. I know that she's shared some expense reports recently, but I
She's
think,
offered to do it, but I don't know that anybody's ever gotten back to her.
yeah. I think yeah, no, I think I should reach out to her, but and also I think we're gonna need to, sounds like we want to meet with her and Ryan about the PFAS issue as well. So maybe I'll send her an email to and communicate both of those things. Yeah, good
Thank you.
reminder.
Yeah, that's good. I just didn't want, I'd like to, I think it'll be helpful for us next year. I'd hate to forget it.
Susie?
And do we need to communicate with the planning board
Yes.
about the article being separated?
Yeah.
And how do you do
The
that?
planning board is Mateo, right? Is he?
No, he's the land use clerk.
Okay.
He's Nate Murphy's the chair of the planning board.
All right. So I will send an email to Nate and explain what our thoughts on that article. And yeah, I think that's part of what we need to discuss on the 13th is because look, we actually have, like, we voted tonight and we've got, finance committee recommends 7-0 on that warrant article. And I think what we mean to say by our vote is we want to promote a rigorous discussion about this at annual town meeting. I think that's what we're trying to communicate there.
Yeah.
Not so much that we necessarily have discussed and weighed in and we think this is, we should continue on this path, right? And so I think even that has to be explained. So you're right that we need to reach out to the planning board, and I think we need to discuss what we want to communicate as part of that discussion at town
You're
meeting.
talking the 30,000 for legal.
Correct. Yeah. Susie?
And last time I spoke as an individual, not as the committee,
Mhm.
and I would probably do that again.
Right. Okay. Anything else for tonight?
Well, that was a lot.
Yeah, we got,
We're not done yet.
So soon?
we got accomplished what we needed to, so
I'll
thanks.
concur.
everyone.
So I'll move to
Yeah.
adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, great. George?
Overnight side.
Groves, I.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
All right, thanks, everybody. Haley, I'll give you a buzz tomorrow. And
Okay, sounds good.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Take care,
night.
Hey, George, Celtics.
Go Celtics.